Tonight, Hawkman fights against a horde of humanoid rats, Superman fights against a bunch of sentient apes, and the Legion of Superheroes takes on some medieval times workers that ride their Dalmatians. Convergence, you really are proving why you're so special. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 194 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I am a big enough man to admit when I was wrong. Mind you, I haven't been wrong about much. I'm usually right about most things, but I am wrong in this case because last week's episode, I ended it with kind of a despair in my voice, a bit of disappointment, and the idea that Convergence is just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And in regards to the main series, it absolutely does. This week is far worse than any other week before, and it does not get better. However, in regards to the tie-ins, this may be the best week for tie-ins out of any week so far. And that is baffling to me. That is absolutely insane to me, because half of the issues are from Earth 51 being the enemy. And Earth 51 is a great disaster has happened, and it's all based basically on Planet of the Apes. But it's Jack Kirby related, so everyone gives it a pass. That's over there. But the other half of the issues are not based on that. They're based on Tangent Comics, and they're based on the vampire world, the Red Rain universe. And between those two, we get some actually really good issues. So stay tuned for that, I guess. But for now, I do need to tell you what is coming out this week. Well, this week and on this week's episode, we will be covering the main Convergence title, number 7, as always. And then we have, in no specific order here, Batman and the Outsiders, Green Lantern Corps, Hawkman, Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, The Adventures of Superman, Justice League of America, New Teen Titans, Swamp Thing, The Flash, and Wonder Woman. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and comment right now which one you think is going to be my favorite. There's a very clear winner here, but at least a top 3 in terms of all good. So I'd love to see the guesses there. No watching to the end and then commenting. I'll know. Don't ask me how, but I'll know. So yeah, that's basically it. In terms of anything else going on, not really much of anything. Next week does mark the finale of Convergence, so if for some reason you're checking out this episode and saying, I don't know if I'm going to come back next week, do it. We're almost done. And that is the one that actually might have some consequences on the mainline universe. Maybe. That's a big if on that, though. But yeah, I really don't have anything else to add on top of that, so comics. Convergence number 7, written by Jeff King and Scott Lobdell, art by Lopresti. So, last issue we had Deimos controlling all of the quote-unquote bad universes, or at least telling them what to do, and they were about to fight the good universes. But this issue, once again, opens in our universe, Earth Zero, where the planet of Telos is being pushed through a portal. Cyborg is talking to Superman saying, hey, all of the clocks just stopped on Earth. Some crazy time stuff is happening. Like, we don't know what the hell's going on. And then Scott Lobdell wrote this because the Oracle, the big old stone deity thing that's been around in a bunch of his events, starts talking for the first time ever. And it's like, I don't understand what's happening here. I can see all of future and all of time and all that, but I can't see what's happening right now. And he starts positing, like, is it because I'm not alive? Will this kill me? Like, what's happening here? And Cyborg's like, hey, what's the big stone thing? And Superman's like, don't worry about it, not a big deal. So Batman chimes in, he's saying like, hey, Superman, where are you? We gotta, like, you gotta get out of there. And he's like, no, there are people here, I gotta get them safe. And he's like, no, you might end up dying from this as well. It's that big of a crisis, dude. You have to be concerned about your own safety. And we see him rescuing a few Stormwatch people, getting to the rest of the group, which is the Red Lanterns and the Justice League United people. And Martian Manhunter's basically like, look, I can read Oracle's mind. I can kind of understand what he's saying. He's preparing for his death. And Superman looks on all sad, saying like, but how do we save everyone? And then Oracle says, you can't. And we go back to the planet where everyone's still fighting each other. All the battles are happening now. Yolanda tells Deimos, hey, call this off, stop the fighting. And people are like, hey, wait a minute, you're talking to him on a first name basis. Are you working with Deimos? And it's like, no, not at all. I'm here peacefully, blah, blah, blah. And I cannot overstate how many of these pages are just like, oh, I can't believe I'm fighting a Wonder Woman, but she's bad. I can't. What is this? What's going on? And it's just a bunch of fighting. At a certain point, the ground starts rupturing up, and Deimos is like, that's not me, guys. And then Telos comes out with his nanites or whatever, and he starts attacking everybody with them. And he's like, yeah, I'm here with my new best friend, Dick Grayson, and we're going to stop you, Deimos. And then Deimos fires off some magic possible time stuff. And he's like, nah, screw you, Telos. You now know that you are not this planet, but you're just a dude who thinks he's a planet, and therefore I can make you a dude again, and therefore I can kill you. So they're just continuing the fight. All the other heroes are looking on like, I don't like either of these guys. Who do we back here? Which one's the better option? So at that point we see one of Deimos's energy blasts manages to rupture through the portal into the Earth Zero universe, and it causes a time something where Superman, Supergirl, and Martian Manhunter all see various different versions of themselves throughout the different time periods of DC. And they're like, what the hell was that? Why did it feel so familiar? Oh, well, whatever. And so we go back into Telos, and we see essentially there's a bubble forming where nobody's able to access it. And as people try to walk up to it, they seemingly like straight up die. Parallax, Green Lantern from 0 Hour universe, comes in. He manages to get inside. He grabs Deimos' fist and says like, hey, this sucks. Stop what you're doing. And Deimos is like, screw you, man. And he blasts Parallax away. Yolanda manages to reveal that in talking to Deimos, he revealed that he's not going to let anybody live. Everyone's going to die. And therefore all the other villains who were on his side, because they heard that he was going to save them, they're like, oh, well, screw that guy then. Let's kick his ass. And so everyone starts trying to charge the bubble, but they start fizzling away. At least the unimportant ones do. And they're just like, okay, we can't get in the bubble. What do we do? And Yolanda starts sniffing and says, I can smell it. And she calls out to Deimos and says, can you hear me? And he's like, yeah, what? What do you want? And he's just like, oh, I get it. You're afraid of Telos. You're afraid of what he can do. And Deimos is like, no, I'm not. And then Telos is like, well, you should be. And he uses his little nanite things from under the ground to grab hold of not only Deimos, but also all of the other people who were on his side prior to that, despite the fact that they had just turned on him, but whatever. He's just like, I am going to keep them imprisoned until I can return them home. That's my goal now. I'm going to send everybody back to their home universes. And you know what? I know you think that I'm just a mortal dude and not a planet, but it's my power and I need it now. So he's got Deimos all bound up. He says, all right, bro, you know my real name. Tell me what it is. And he's like, ho, you think I am defeated, but I got magic spells, bitch. And he casts some, I don't know, whatever, binding energy. It binds up all of our Justice League members that we've been following. And then a voice behind says like, and he's like, nothing can defeat me. And a voice behind's like, nothing. And we see it's Parallax once again. He got out of it. And he's just like, hey, here's the thing, Deimos, I've been listening to the way you talk, and you wield your power for selfish needs. Unlike me, who used my power to try to bring back Coast City in a very extremely selfish way. Anyway, and so he blasts Deimos to the point where he just incinerates him. He explodes in a massive greenish-blue explosion, and there's a crater left afterwards. And Telos is like, oh my god, you destroyed him. And Parallax is like, yeah, of course I did. A Parallax, it's what I do. Anyway, you can go ahead and send the rest of us home now, right? And Telos goes, no, you don't understand. Deimos absorbed all this time-traveling energy, all this chronal energy. He didn't know how to control it, but he was figuring it out. But now all of that energy is going nutty, just out into the environment. And so the skies start having these weird banding effect, and we see that the power's been released. So now through the portal into Earth Zero, a red beam of energy comes out and strikes towards the Oracle. And the Oracle's like, oh, okay, I get it now. And so he turns around and protects Superman and Supergirl from the blast. And he's like, oh, your future Superman, Supergirl, they are unknown. And we see he starts breaking apart. And he's like, don't worry, it's not just me. All of reality is breaking apart. And we see everyone that's in the Justice United and the Red Lanterns and all that are all just floating in space as Superman, Supergirl are like, uh-oh. And that's the issue. That's the whole thing. Also, not worth noting, but tiny little petty thing. They miscolored Jediah Call, thinking that was Guy Gardner on the page. So he's a Red Lantern on this, despite the fact that Guy Gardner, right next to him, is a Green Lantern. This book has no idea what it's doing. Look, I don't want to be too harsh on it because, like, it's dealing with big topics, and it might just be doing broad enough that it feels like, oh, you know, it's just playing the long game. It'll all come together in issue 8. No, this book has no idea what it's doing. This book was so cobbled together, and it's very telling to me the fact that once Scott Lobdell started being credited as a writer on this, it immediately got worse to me. It immediately got to a point where I'm like, oh, okay, so we're doing all this stuff with Earth Zero. I feel like there was like Jeff King submitted the story to editorial and they said, great. And then the reviews for issues like 1 and 2 were coming out and everyone's like, oh, they hate it. Quick, rewrite it and quickly draw some pages to get it into the main universe. I doubt that's how it happened, but like it feels so hackneyed together and like so randomly put in here. On top of that, again, like there was no thought put into who the Earth Zero characters were. They have the guy from Threshold, despite the fact that he's dead, and apparently a Red Lantern in this book, despite the fact he never was. Like, it's so dumb. Art-wise is okay. Whatever they're doing with the time trial. Look, I'm sure they're going to pull something out of their ass in the last issue. I don't doubt whether we're not going to get an explanation. I just don't see it as being any good. So 4. It's a boring read, and what's worse is that it feels like it's trying to make it seem bigger than it could ever possibly be. And it, like, plot-wise, it seems like it should be big, but the way that the book is treating it itself, it's like it was a late essay that was being written the night before the deadline. That's the only thing I'm getting out of this. So yeah, 4 for this. We'll see what happens in the finale. Convergence, Superboy, and the Legion of Superheroes #2, written by Stuart Moore, art by Peter Gross, with finishes by Marc Farmer. So, last issue was basically just the entire setup of Superboy was in the future with the Legion, it got captured under a dome, and they've just been trying to deal with 31st century Metropolis for all this time. Domes came up, and they were immediately beset upon by, not listed in the issue, but in this one it is the Atomic Knights, who are like old medieval looking knights riding giant ass Dalmatians. So we pick up this issue in the City of the Atomic Knights, which came from Earth 51, I believe, after what's known as the Great Disaster. And we see some of the knights talking. They're, out of their helmets. One is named Marlene, goes to one who they call Gardner. No relation to Guy Gardner, as far as I'm aware. And Gardner's just like, this dome has been hell. We've barely been making it through. Like, everything ever since the Great Disaster, everything's been awful, and now we got to go out there and we got to fight some other people. And they're like, hey, are you sure that's a good idea? And he's like, no, this is a terrible idea, but we don't have a choice. So they say how unfair it is that they have to fight superheroes. They're just normal people, but regardless, they have to do whatever they can to save their world, especially after all the hardship they went through. And one of them, named Brendan, is like, hey, I'm kind of a sciencey type. I can go try to find out something. I can see what I can do. And he's like, go ahead, but we're moving on with our plan here. So they all hop on their Dalmatians and they head off. We get a flashback to young Clark on the farm. And apparently a chicken broke its neck. It's still alive, but like the chicken broke its neck. And Pa Kent's just like, look, it may not be the best thing, but it is the humane thing to do. We got to kill the chicken. And so he gets out a big hatchet and cuts the chicken's head off. And he's like, be glad that you're a boy and you don't have to deal with this yet. So at that point, we cut back to the present. Superboy's remarking on that same thing. He's like, yeah, be happy being a boy. Look where I'm at. So the Atomic Knights are like, hey, surrender or we're going to destroy your city. And the other Knights are like, I'm sorry, what are you doing here, man? And he's like, yep, that's what we're going to do. Don't test me. I'm definitely willing to destroy your city. And Superboy's like, I don't know who you think you are, but we don't do well with threats. Maybe we should go talk in private and like come to a conclusion on this. And hey, we can go to your city if you want, if you feel more comfortable there. And immediately the Knights are just like, oh, you want to go to our city. Okay, let me tell you something about our city. We have a population of 209, and that includes a baby that was born a few weeks ago. And let me tell you, I'm going to do every goddamn thing I can to save that child. And they starts chewing out the superheroes of like, we defended our place. Where were you when the bombs fell? All this stuff. And they're all like, okay, you're listening to a lot of backstory for your world, but we're not familiar with any of that. And then all of a sudden, one of them, I don't know who, the fire-powered one, gets zapped out of the sky. And so the Legion's like, oh, you attacked one of us. It's go time. We then follow Brendan as he's making his way to the Legion base. And he comes across the Legion base and he's like, I believe this is the base, considering it's a very large base and it has an L written on it. So he gets inside and he's like, wow, security here is really lax. I don't know why I'm able to get in so much. You think there'd be at least like a turd or something. But as he gets into deeper rooms, there's Brainiac saying like, hey, I know you're looking at the same stuff I did. I'm the one who's letting you in. Now let's go ahead and get started. And Brendan's like, oh, okay. So we go back to the fight. We see that the Legion is very easily taking care of most of the Knights, like they have the ability to do so. However, because they have been depowered for so long, they're very rusty. So we get like Ultra Boy, I believe it is, who's only able to use one power at a time. He accidentally uses the wrong power instead of invulnerability, so he gets zapped out of the sky. We see Lightning Saturn, I don't know, someone gets zapped with an energy beam, a whole bunch of other stuff like that. So as they're going through, one of them manages to find Invisible Kid, who's just floating around invisible. And he's like, haha, we have infrared scanners. And he grabs hold of him and says, all right, well, we're going to use you. So one of the Heat ones attacks one of the Knights. She's forced to cast off her armor. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize there were women here as well. And so that's when Superboy is confronted by the one who grabbed Invisible Kid. He's got a gun to his head and says, like, I will kill your invisible guy unless you surrender. Like, I know who you are. You're Superboy, big hero of the 20th century. But, like, if you will do anything necessary to save your people, let me see you do that now. And at that point, Wildfire, who, if you recall from the last issue, because he was just energy dissipated after the dome came down, he comes back, he's in his suit, and he's like, ha, I'm here now, and I'm here to help. And so we see what the secret weapon is, which, strangely enough, I only very recently became familiar with Countdown to Final Crisis, which is not good. I would not suggest reading it, but there is this thing called the Mortococcus virus, which was used on Earth 51 as part of like the Great Disaster. It's the big thing that killed like everyone, and they've got a sample of it, and they said, we will unleash it on your city and everyone will be dead in a couple minutes. And Superboy's like, that'll kill you too. And he's like, yes, but our city will live, and that is the ultimate test here. And he's like, yeah, this is the hardest decision I've ever had to make, but I'm sure it's the same for you, Superboy. So at that point, Superboy's like, okay, look, I need you to stop and think about what you're doing here. Like, sometimes it's harder not to kill than it is to kill, and you need to be able to make that decision. It sounds like your world didn't make it soon enough, but you can make that decision now. The war's over. And we see the other Knights come up behind Gardner being like, hey, man, I don't think this is a good idea. We shouldn't have come here to kill anybody, right? And so he realizes his error, passes the weapon over to Superboy. Superboy flies it away, or at least starts to. Meanwhile, Brendan and Brainiac come out and say, hey, we did a bunch of scans on the planet. We see what theoretically is going on here. And they're like trying to both take credit for their own thing. And like neither of them can give up even the smallest bit of credit. But then there's an earthquake. A bunch of civilians almost get hit. So one of the Atomic Knights jumps into the way. Superboy also goes to save them from the wreckage and ends up dropping the bioweapon, to which I'm going to again say Lightning Lass, but I don't know specifically. She comes in, she tries to grab it, she starts falling out of the air, and then Superboy has to catch her. So, long story short, they keep everything together and they say, yeah, okay, we're keeping a lock on the signal, we're trying to figure out what's going on. They basically come to the conclusion that the planet is moving into a different reality, which we know from the Convergence number 6, and we see that, you know, the Atomic Knights are making peace with Superboy. They say, all right, yeah, well, we'll go back to our city. We'll see what we can do. I mean, technically nobody won or lost here, so we'll see what all is going to happen, but whatever. And so they get some supplies. They make their way out, and Lightning Lass and Superboy share a moment where it's like, hey, you know, it feels like some big things are going to happen. We might not exist soon, so that's a whole thing, but maybe we can continue our little relationship for just a moment here. And so they share a kiss at the end, and that's where we wrap up. I like it. I like it more than I like a lot of these tie-ins. And I think the reason that I like it the most is that it does play up the moral implications a bit. Like, so many of these stories are just, oh, I have to fight you because the big voice said so. And like, that's still present in this book. I'm not going to deny it's not here, but the extra added thing of these people have been through absolute hell even before the domes came down gives this extra sort of survivorship to them, where they see like, we went through all of that and now it might all be for nothing. And so they have that little extra push to them. So I think the Atomic Knights are good go against, especially with the optimism and eternal whatever of the Legion. It's a good counter there. My only critique might be a little bit of I would say art style specifically, but also, I think I said this in the last issue, the Legion itself, like, they try to give each of them their own little personality and like thing to do, but I just treat them as a whole. I treat them as a larger Legion. So whenever they're like, oh, I'm going to shoot Invisible Kid, it's like, is there something special about that where we really should care about Invisible Kid? Or is it just, we can't let one of our own die? A little toss up there, but it's such a minor nitpick, all things considered. So I think I'm going to say this one is a 7.5, and I'll leave it at there. Convergence Green Lantern Corps number 2 with shared storytelling credits between Dave Gallaher and Steve Ellis. So, yeah, the last issue had Guy, after he went through his own traumatic stuff of being like in a coma and in the Phantom Zone and stuff like that, was happy to say, hey, all right, let's be a Green Lantern again. The domes are up. And then Hal basically said, nah, screw that. I'm going off to go fight the thing. Guy, you're too weird or whatever. And so Guy loaded up on a motorcycle and said, all right, I'm going to do this myself. So we cut over to what I presume is Earth 51, because that seems to be a lot of the things in this collection that I'm reading from are Earth 51. We come against a guy named the Anti-God. Sure. He's a big guy. He's got like 6 arms, 6 faces, and he's just absolutely mopping the floor with Hal Jordan. And at that point, a boxing glove arrow comes in out of nowhere, and he's like, who dares? And we see it's John Stewart with his own ring, and he's like, would you believe it's Green Arrow? Ha ha ha. So at that point, the Anti-God comes in, and he's like, haha, I will waste billions of lives just like you. And so they come in ready to attack, and then all of a sudden there is a feedback loop of energy or something that knocks out their rings and knocks them to the ground. So we cut over to the wasteland between the two cities, and we see Guy on his motorcycle outrunning a dragon. Why is there a dragon? So we see him pull out a baseball bat, ride off of a ridge, and say, yeah, being your food ain't in the cards today. And so he rides up and hits it in the face and knocks it out. And he's like, all right, cool. So later on, he sets up a camp, nice little fire and some, I assume, dragon meat. And he's using a scanner that he got from Hal's lab to scan for Hal. And as he's using the scanner's like, oh, 50 miles due east or whatever. Also, an antimatter has been detected. The stars in the sky are not actually stars. They're actually much lower than that, and they are made of antimatter, just suspended in midair. So at that point, he hears a rumbling behind him. Turns out it's a big old wolf dog thing. And he's like, oh, I'm not going to hurt you, buddy. And he hands out some bacon, or some dragon bacon, I guess, in his hand. And the dog, like, takes a liking to him, lays down next to him, and Guy takes a nap. When he wakes up, seemingly, it's all a dream, but when he wakes up, it seems that Zod is torturing him while he's in his Green Lantern outfit in the Phantom Zone. And he's just like, haha, you will bend to Zod, and I want you to think of the person who betrayed you. Think of Hal Jordan. He's like, no, never, but also, yeah, it's okay, Hal Jordan. So then we cut over to the antimatter universe where he's bound up again, and Sinestro's like, yeah, Hal's the one that everyone loves. You suck, Guy. Nobody likes you, and you're going to be trapped here forever. And he puts him in a yellow bubble, and he's just like, no, never. And so he wakes up with a fright, and when he wakes up, he realizes he has actually been tied up by two strange people who were like, oh, hey, you speak actual English. What's going on here? Turns out these people are Hercules, like actual honest-to-God Hercules, and a woman named Jennifer Monroe, and the dog belongs to them. Its name is Basil. I don't know who these people are. I'm assuming Earth 51. So he's just like, okay, hey, what do I got to say for you guys to untie me? And he explains the whole story. It takes like 2 hours, and they're just like, all right, that's crazy. But also, yeah, okay, I guess we believe you, whatever. But he's still tied up. And she's saying, yeah, if the Green Lanterns are where you say they are, they're fighting against the anti-god. He's over in Durvale, but we evacuated that area because we're heroes that are going through the wasteland trying to save as many people as possible. And Guy looks over at Hercules, and he's wearing this big-ass armor, and he's like, how brave can you really be? I mean, sure, maybe you're saving people, and we need people like that, but you're wearing that, what, impervious armor? You're not a real hero. And Hercules is like, what? Huh? You want to fight? And so Guy challenges him to an arm wrestling contest for his freedom. They start arm wrestling and apparently have been at it for half an hour, according to Jennifer. And Guy's holding his own, and he eventually tells the audience that there's a trick to it. You gotta twist your wrist at the right angle, do something else. But he manages to beat Hercules in an arm wrestling competition. And the prize for him winning is that they had to give him a lift over to Durvale, and also he gets Hercules' armor. So he puts it on, tosses them the keys of the motorcycle, says, all right, go out, keep saving people, fight the good fight. And by the way, Hercules, I'm going to need a little extra lift for that extra mile. And we see him just flying through the air as Hercules threw him. He ends up landing pretty close to where John Stewart crashed down. And he's like, hey, John, what's going on? Where's Hal? And it's like, oh, the earthquake, it knocked him that way. And we see there's this huge chasm, and he tells John, like, hey, I need you to build something, use that architect brain. So he uses a ring just enough to build a tiny little bridge to cross. All the while, Guy's getting little figments of Sinestro and Zod in his head being like, hell, Hal Jordan, he's the one who betrayed you. So they get back over to Hal. He helps pick him up. He's like, yeah, I'm here for rescue. We'll deal with that after you guys get fixed up. So they go into a cave, and Hal immediately is just like, I owe you an apology. After all the craziness that was the past year under the dome, I wasn't thinking straight, and you really have always been a Green Lantern. I should have treated you with respect, and blah, blah, blah. And so they pull out the battery, start saying the oath, and Guy gets his Green Lantern ring back, and he's like, all right, awesome. Let's go fight the anti-god. So they fly out. There's also a storm going on in this city as caused by the anti-god. It's very mercurial, but John is like, I'll keep the storm at bay. You guys go fight. And as they arrive, we see the anti-god is just towering over buildings. They come in trying to attack as best they can. Nothing they can really do about it. Like, they have no new options. But then Guy looks up into the sky, sees the stars, and he's like, oh, wait, I got something. So he puts the giant into the bubble, a bubble of Green Lantern energy, and he asks Hal for some backup. Hal literally gives him a hand, a green construct hand, which Guy groans at, and they fly him up high enough into the sky to get to one of these antimatter stars. And he's like, yep, this should work. And so he throws him around, throws him into a star, and because he is still made of matter, it works. He explodes into nothingness. So they come back down, and we see a big as far as I can tell, like, Green Lantern construct of Telos' face. I don't know why. But they're like, hey, guy, we couldn't have done that without you. And then guy just turns around, punches Hal in the face. And I was like, yeah, all right, I guess I deserve that. What do we do now? And they offer to go out into the wasteland and help Hercules and Jennifer do whatever they need to do of saving people. That's the issue. So I can see a way this could work. And not that it didn't inherently work on its own. I think it's okay. It just, there's something that really could have made it better. And that is taking the trauma, the little trauma dream he had of Zod and Sinestro, and tying that into the solution on how to beat the anti-god. Because they were so close with the fact that the stars were made of antimatter, and Sinestro held him captive in the antimatter universe. Like, there's a little link there, and I think if they just had tweaked it slightly, we could have used this thing where Guy's greatest contribution is all the hardships that he had gone through. It's his ability to help because of that, not in spite of it. So it's almost there. As for the villain itself, the anti-god, it's a nothing villain. It's just a giant monster. Like, there's no depth to it. We have no problems with them taking him out. Like, yeah, he was always going to be a pain in the ass. So it's okay as it is. I think I'm probably going to say like a 6.5. It's missing a little something there to push it over the edge, but it's certainly fine. Convergence, Batman and the Outsiders, #2, written by Marc Andreyko, art by Carlos de Anda. So last issue was basically just the extended sequence of Gotham City, pre-crisis, just barely, like literally at the cusp of crisis. The Outsiders are all missing their powers, and so Batman's the only one who's still really going around doing things. Everyone kind of hates it, except for Metamorpho, who kind of enjoyed the fact that he's able to not be a freak of nature. And then at the end of the issue, they get their powers back, and we come up against OMAC. So what the hell's an OMAC? This doesn't explain it, but we open up with a young man who seems to be named Buddy Blank. He's just floating in a void. He calls out for Brother Eye, and then this very large woman just shows up in this void and says, nope, Brother Eye is gone, but I am here. Godmother is your mistress now. And we see that was only like a week after they were taken, and he is able to control into this big hulking brute known as OMAC. And it seems that he's under the control of Godmother. So OMAC and the rest of this mutant horde thing start invading Gotham City. Geoforce is like, nope, not on my watch. And he starts throwing up all these rocks, taking him out. Across town, Black Lightning is getting back used to his powers again. He has all this electrical stuff, and he's like, oh, okay, all right, I'm feeling good. Batman calls over the comm and says, Outsiders, everyone, stop what you're doing. We got, domes are up, and we got people invading. We then go over to, and God, I'm not going to remember her name until they say it later on. There was a comatose one whose name I think was like Nova or something like that. I'll call her that until I get her actual name. She was in the hospital comatose. When she woke up, there was a burst of energy, and Katana was buried underneath the rubble. And so Nova looks around just like, oh God, Katana. And so she goes down and saves her. We then see Metamorpho in the shower with his girlfriend, wife, whatever you want to call it, and he's like, oh God, I turned back into Metamorpho, and my touch has been harmful to you. Oh, this is awful. And she's like, hey, it's cool. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I didn't hurt that much. Batman's calling you over the comms. Just go. He needs you. Just go. And there's a sadness to both of them, but he does know he's being called. So we see Godmother pulling the levers behind the scene to control OMAC, attacking the Outsiders. Geoforce is doing a good job of fighting back, but then OMAC throws a police cruiser with police officers in it. So Geoforce is trying to catch that, where Batman shows up in the Batcopter and helps the cops get out. The rest of the Outsiders all show up to attack, and OMAC commands his army to kill them all. So inside, we see Buddy Blank is trying to fight against Godmother's control and saying like, oh no, we have to fight her, we have to go up against, but all we see OMAC doing is going, Yar! So clearly it's still menacing on their end. Batman and all them start going in, they're trying to save civilians where they can from the mutants while also still fighting against the mutants. The woman's name is Halo. She controls light powers, so I'm going to stand by Nova as a better name. But regardless, Halo and Katana team up. They start blasting the energy and using the sword against them. Metamorpho uses his shifting ability to help some crumbling buildings from falling on top of him. And Omac all the while is like trying, you hear him saying like, get out of my head, and he's trying to fight against Godmother. And in doing so, Batman manages to sneak up behind, put a collar of some sort around Omac that gives him just enough time to let Black Lightning and Halo attack him, and it fries Godmother's systems on the back end, which allows Omac to stand up and say, you've got to stop me before she gains control again. And then Godmother presses a big old red button, which seems to reboot the system. So at that point, all the outsiders are like, all right, you heard what he said. He wants to be stopped, so let's do it. Geoforce brings up a whole bunch of magma, engulfs Omac in it, and then Metamorpho turns into liquid nitrogen in order to super freeze it. Omac is now trapped inside of solid rock. All of the mutants start running away, and Geoforce is like, yeah, that's what I thought. And Godmother's like, no, you've doomed us all. And having won the fight, it's implied, like, Telos's voice comes over and it says, like, Batman and the Outsiders win, victory decided. And then Omac is just destroyed. Like, it's really hard to say exactly what happened, because they say, hey, let's send this visitor back where he came from. And it's implied they, like, blast him away, but then we get a panel as he is leaving the city where, like, we see inside the mind again, and it's Buddy Blank talking to Brother Eye, and he's like, hey, buddy, I'm back. Our time is at an end. And then he seemingly dies. So we see Rex Metamorpho looking in a mirror. There's some reflective glass. He sees the old version of him and then the new version of himself, and he's like, yeah, I'm all right, Batman. Don't worry about me. I really would have liked a life with my dear Sapphire, but hey, at least we won this, right? And Batman's like, yes, for the moment, but this isn't over yet. And they all pose for an image no one's taking, and we see, theoretically, Telos's eyes up in the sky watching over everything. Okay. I don't know. It's this has always been my thing with the Jack Kirby creations, and I hate to keep going back to this because it really is unfair to a man who cannot defend himself. But it always feels like DC is operating under the assumption that you know them. That you know the Jack Kirby creations and they don't have to explain it. Like, you go into a Batman comic, and unless it's a very specific Batman comic, they don't have to explain who Batman is. They assume most readers know that going into it. They seem to do the same for a lot of Jack Kirby creations. So when I see Omac and they're like, oh, Buddy Blank and Brother Eye and Godmother, and I'm going, what? It feels like DC is saying, what do you mean, what? You haven't read all of Jack Kirby's Fourth World creations? What's the matter with you? And I'm like, I'm sorry. I also didn't read Infinite Crisis, and I feel like I should know that as well. So yeah, it's a little bit weird for me in that if you know these creations, it might be better. It might be more understandable as to what's happening. But for me personally, I don't get it. It feels like they did a lot of focus on the internal workings of Omac and tried to make me care, but then didn't actually do anything to make me care. So yeah, I think this one is probably going to be 6. It feels like a 6. It's not, like, again, it's not bad. It just isn't quite hitting the marks I wanted to. So yeah, I don't know what else to say on top of that, but 6. Convergence, The Adventures of Superman #2, written by Marv Wolfman, art by Roberto, Viacava. So, last issue, Superman and Supergirl tried escaping the domes, Convergence and all that by going through the Phantom Zone, and then they accidentally got kind of stuck there. And Supergirl had visions of the fact that Crisis on Infinite Earths is going to happen, and she's going to die there. So, that happened. And then the very end of the issue was apes attacking Metropolis outside the Phantom Zone. This issue picks up with the Phantom Zone people. The zoners are fighting against Superman and Supergirl, and they're like, yeah, we really hate Superman in here. Supergirl, you too, but like not as much. So we'll kill you quickly, but we're really going to torture Superman. And at that point, like, they're just doing their best, trying to figure out how they're supposed to survive because the portal closed before they were able to get through it. And at that point, we get the easy out where Lucius hops over and says, hey, seems like you missed your window. I'm going to reopen the portal again. Get through quickly. And so he does. And all the zoners are just like, hey, you know we have super hearing too, right? We were able to hear Lucius over your comms. Like, we're not going to let you out. That's not what's going to happen. They're going to be dead, but we're going to leave. So at that point, Superman's like, the hell you will. And he grabs hold of Kara, throws her through the portal, says, I'll stop them, you go through. And he starts getting the crap kicked out of him on the other side. We then cut over to who the hell are the villains that are attacking via Convergence. And that is Earth 51, New York City, post-Great Disaster. Think Planet of the Apes. That's really the only thing you need to know is Planet of the Apes. But also there are a couple other smart animals. And we see one of them is named General Simeon, who's an ape. And he's like, I will be the champion. And then a rhino shows up and just like, the hell you will. And then Simeon just starts beating the ever-loving crap out of him, saying like, okay, who wants some? We see Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, who's, again, just accepted. He's watching this with some of his compatriots who are also talking animals, saying like, oh God, how do we stop them? What do we do? But Simeon's like, nah, let's go. Let's take over the other city we got to go to. So back with Superman, the Phantom Zone, Lucius is like, if only there's something you could do, but you can't possibly go back in because that would be too risky. And so because they're in a bat cave, or at least Wein Enterprises, Supergirl grabs a grappling hook, shoots it through the portal, grabs hold of Superman and pulls it back. And then as the zoners start flying after, she heat visions the Phantom Zone projector. And we basically get a full straight page of Superman being like, that was stupid and risky and you should have closed it beforehand, but I'm so proud of you because you're such a capable person. And she's like, oh, Kal-El, the world depends on you. Universes depend on you. I couldn't possibly let you die. And Lucius is like, okay, if you guys are done, like patting each other on the back, we're being overrun by apes outside the window. Maybe we should take care of that. So we see General Simeon's watching over all of this. He gets attacked by Kamandi, who again is like a 12-year-old kid, and he like kicks General Simeon in the face and being like, hey, stop, you don't have to do this, like you don't have to kill anybody. And he's like, you're right, I want to do this. So he knocks down Kamandi, he's about to kill him, and that's when Supergirl comes in, knocks out Simeon as Superman comes in and saves him. And he's like, hi, what's your name? And he's like, oh, my name's Kamandi, and I recognize you. You're Superman. You're in all of our ancient texts. And he's just like, ancient? Wait, what? And at that point, Superman has to set Kamandi down because a bunch of apes are going to attack him with laser beams. They get zapped by all the energy stuff, and Superman's like, oh, you know, I'm still a little bit weak from the Phantom Zone. I'm doing my best, but hey, don't worry about me, Kara. Everything's going to be fine. One of them attacks Kara with a sword, and she's like, seriously? She just punches through the sword, grabs him by the neck, and like throws him away. Simeon sees all this happen, being like, all right, we're going to need to pull out the ultimate weapon, but for right now, to get over to it, we need a distraction. And so he seemingly sets off a suicide bomb on some of his own soldiers, blows up the top of a building, like across town. And Superman's like, oh, he literally says, great Scott. And him and Kara say, hey, their leader's escaping, but we gotta go. We gotta figure out what to do over there. So they get a little montage of helping save people. And Kara's just like, oh, okay, well, we lost General Simeon. I don't know where he's supposed to be. And that's where Kamandi comes in being like, I know where he is. And as they start flying away, Supergirl is like, hi, what's your name? He's like, oh, Kamandi. And I recognize you, Supergirl. We are all so grateful for your sacrifice. And she's like, I don't, let's not talk about things anymore. Let's fly quietly. So they fly super speed over there, and they talk about, like, so he's from our future? Like, it seems like everything's pretty messed up. What happened in our thing? And it's like, don't worry about it. Don't, it's not technically our future. We'll figure it out. And then Kara goes on a little thing of like, I recognize that my fate's already sealed to die and whatever that crisis thing was, but I still have to be able to save Superman to be able to win that day. So that's what I must do. And Superman picks up on this, like, hey, you've been like really on me recently and like acting weird. What's up? And she's like, I was just afraid of leaving you in the Phantom Zone. And I do want to point out, they specifically say for the past 3 days. I don't know where that came from, but apparently 3 days. So they basically, she just sticks to that story and says like, yeah, no, Phantom Zone, don't worry about it. But we see a bunch of the other animals are down and they do nothing different they just zap Superman and Supergirl again with the lasers, but this time it's stronger and it knocks them out. And Kamandi, who was set down earlier, is also grabbed by a chimp. So one of the apes brings Kamandi forward, and Kamandi's like, what do you plan on doing with Superman? He's like, check it out. And they've strapped Superman to a missile, a nuclear warhead that is the ultimate weapon. And Kamandi goes, that's going to kill all of us, including you. And he's like, no, it won't. It'll kill Superman. It'll kill everybody else. But us apes are invincible. I am invincible. And at that point, I guess Kara just didn't get captured for whatever reason, because she just immediately flies over and just grabs hold of Kamandi. Superman breaks out of his chains and saying, like, yeah, we just were following you to see what your ultimate weapon was. And so Superman takes the payload, flies it up into the air, and just detonates it up in the sky where it won't do as much damage. So he does that. Kara takes care of the rest of the apes, and they're like, all right, well, I guess that means we won. No big deal. Sorry, Kamandi, but we did technically defeat your city. And Kamandi's like, don't worry about it. This place was already whatever. If they're going to destroy my people, I need to be with them. I'm going to stay here. Bye. And so Kamandi goes off, and Superman's like, all right, but for like real, Kara, is there something you're not telling me? And she's like, you're just so cool, Superman, and I thought you were going to die, and look, you'll always be here to make things right. That's all that matters. And then there's a big earthquake, and they're like, what the hell was that? And they realize this earthquake is happening here. It likely is also happening over in Metropolis. So they're like, well, whatever's going on here, whatever connection there may be, we're going to take this war to our kidnapper. We're going to fight against whoever put us here to begin with. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. It was whatever. So back in the first issue, I really was praising the idea of Kara having this foresight, having this future knowledge of Crisis on Infinite Earths is going to happen. And I felt like that was a really inspired choice because it adds just that little bit of extra weight to things. I don't feel like they did enough with it. It's basically just comes down to the melodrama of Superman being like, but what do you know? And her just being like, I don't know what I wanted them to do with it, but it just kind of felt like it was there for the ability for Kara to just go, oh, but this has to happen. Like, I think the best option, if I was just throwing out ideas here, is make it seem like Superman did the sacrificial play. Make it seem like he actually did straight up die or something like that, and get kind of a parallel to that panel in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like, play with that for a moment, and then roll it back and say, like, nah, actually it wasn't. Like, maybe that wouldn't work, maybe it would, but I just feel like what we got didn't actually really pay that off in any meaningful way. Add on top of that, apes against Superman, like, they didn't even try to make it a fight, and that's fine. It doesn't always have to be a good fight, but I didn't feel like there was anything else to fill in besides a good fight here. It was kind of just Superman shows up, gets zapped, gets up, punches the apes, and that's it. Like, repeat 3 times. So, yeah, I think this one is probably going to be like a 6.5 for me. It's just shy of that 7. I really think they could have done something special with it, especially with that first half, but especially throwing in how, like, the cliffhanger ending from the last one really meant absolutely nothing. I don't know. It all just kind of fell apart in the end. Convergence Hawkman number 2, written by Jeff Parker, art by Tim Truman. So last issue was basically just going through, hey, here's Hawkman and Hawkwoman, here's what they do. They're apparently the ones from Thanagar, not the ones that ancient Egyptian whatever. And there were other Thanagarians in the dome that they recently discovered, and they were going on the offensive, only to find out that they were using it to try to view outside the dome, and they think they actually found something. So we open up this one where, as the dome comes out and they say, hey, you got to fight or your universe is going to die, Hawkman and Hawkwoman are like, hey, you guys got Thanagarian weapons here? Because screw it. I'm all in. Let's go ahead and fight. And so they pick up a bunch of weapons from them and just like, oh, but like, what's the reason to fight if there's nothing to fight for? And they go like, that's the exact reason why. We get to choose how we face Oblivion. So they fly out, and the other Thanagarians are like, psh, stupid. That's dumb. So They fly out in the wastelands, not even knowing who they're going up against, and they're like, oh, it feels so good to fly out here and all that stuff, and hopefully the rest of the Leaguers can take care of whatever else they need to back there, but we can scout in the air. And then all of a sudden they get zapped by a weapon. And it turns out it's a bunch of man-bats, but not actual man-bats. These are man-bats from Earth 51, aka Great Disaster Timeline. I don't know what else to say, but they're all wearing tank tops and jeans, and just like, haha, yes, it is us, the bats. We control the skies. We will take you out. And the Hawk people are like, all right, let's do something about it. So they supercharge up their maces and they start zapping all the bats out of the skies. They start firing. We get a whole bunch of pages of like the tactical maneuvering and how the Hawk people are able to use their weapons effectively and say like, yeah, they're stupid. They have no strategic ability. We're able to knock them out, no problem. And so the bats are like, all right, well, everyone fall back just a little bit, like lead off in that direction. And so they do, and then a giant swarm of bats come in, and Hawkman and Woman realize, oh, they're just trying to overwhelm us by numbers. And it's working. So they pull out whatever weapons they can to do what they can to fight against the bats. Ultimately, it doesn't do a lot for them. And then we see down on the ground, there is a ground battalion of rats that have teamed up with the bats. And the rodents have made their own army here, and they fire upon the swarm of bats, which also end up taking out Hawkman and Hawkwoman, and they're knocked down to the ground. So sometime later, they both wake up. They are strapped to a missile that the rats have a hold of, and they're like, haha, you see, you humans, we've taken your wings and your beaks and all that, but we are now the dominant creatures and the higher life forms and blah, blah, blah. And they're basically saying, yeah, we're just going to fire the missile back at your city so that we can call that a win there. But it's not like an explosive missile. It's a neurotoxin something or another. So they explain that pre-Great Disaster, when they knew the disaster was coming, a bunch of humans grafted their DNA with other animals that would be more likely to survive the great apocalypse, the disaster coming, and that's why we have rat people and bat people. Roll with it. So yeah, they're just like, yeah, all right, we're ready for launch. Let's go ahead and do it. And Hawkman looks over at Hawkwoman, who's just totally chill, like just like kind of relaxing against the missile, and he's like, "This is why I've always admired you. You're so calm in the face of danger. I have a confession. I wasn't supposed to be your partner back on the Force. I traded a gun to this other guy to be able to be your partner." And she's like, "Oh, I already knew about that, but thanks for admitting it. And by the way, I'm not as relaxed as you think. I'm just trying to maneuver my arm behind my back to get this hidden blade." And so they cut out of the ropes just before the missile launches. It goes off, and they're like, "Aha, we escaped." But, oh, wait, the missile's still being fired off towards Gotham. And all of a sudden, we see another energy beam come out of nowhere, hit the missile, turn it around backward, and crash it into the mice. Mind you, it explodes, and it's not a deadly neurotoxin, but whatever, I guess. It's been 3 pages. It's hard to remember that stuff. And they say, wait a minute, who did that? That wasn't us. That wasn't, whatever. Don't worry about it. So they see the rat that currently has their wings, and so they go over, beat up a bunch of rats, grab hold of them, and they're like, all right, let's get up in the air. And as the rats try firing at them, they say, hold on, hold your fire. The bats will have them soon. So we see more of a horde of bats come in and just like, oh, well, you may be the skilled warriors of the sky, but there are still only 2 of you. And in comes the cavalry. Turns out it's a bunch of a militia from Gotham, as well as the Thanagarians from before, and they're like, hey, we heard your thing about facing oblivion on our own terms, and we decided to go with it, so we're here to join the fight for the future. And so there's a whole big battle that happens, and the fallout of it is essentially all the Thanagarians die. There's a couple of normal people still standing, but the Thanagarians are all dead. And the one that was in like charge hands them a little thing saying, hey, the Absorbicon, the thing that we like put a bunch of Thanagarians' minds together for, you can control it with this. We were all part of a hive mind, so like I don't feel any problem with dying because like I'm not fully dead or whatever, but yeah, whatever, here you go. So Hawkman and Hawkwoman look at it and they're like, should we check it out? Should we see what the truth is? Should we, this is a big deal now. And it's just like, well, let's do it. Let's see what our final fate is. And so they check out the Absorbicon, they hack into the mines, and they see something attacks Thanagar. All of their enemies of the past start attacking Thanagar, but it barely even matters that Thanagar falls because something destroys all of reality. Earth itself falls into nothing, and they're like, oh, that sucks. I was kind of liking Earth. But then just before everything goes black, just before everything else, they see something else starting to come out of the nothingness, some new thing being formed. And at that point, there's an earthquake. They get interrupted, and they're like, wait, but did you see? There was something there. And they're like, well, even if things look grim, there's always the promise that there's something else. Like, we may not be anything we know, but there will be something to follow. And so they fly up into the sky. Everything fades to white. The end. Okay, positives. Really like the ending there. I like the ending where they see crisis happening and they're like, this version of us is most likely going to end, but there will be another one, and that's something to be okay with. That's something to just look forward to tomorrow and say it's never the end. I like that level of optimism. That's a good way of doing it, and I think they did a good job of setting it up in the prior issue of saying, like, no, we saw this thing and it's horrific, but like finding the hope in that. Good. Thumbs up. Downside. The villains, the rats and the bats. Look, a lot of the issues that came out this week are from Earth 51, post-Great Disaster, like stuff like that. If you don't have the villain base, if you don't have enough going on of like strong heroes or villains to pull on to be able to fill out more than like 2 issues, don't use it as your central base. Pick something else. Say like, oh, and this one's going to be fighting the pirate universe, or this one's going to be fighting the whatever. Like, do anything else. But the fact that they specifically chose the rats and the bats here feels so strange and like non-connected. Like, they do their best of saying like, haha, bats can fly and so can hawks. It's like, you could have picked anything. You could have picked any flying hero from any other universe and it would have worked just as well. But I digress. It just felt a little bit weak for me. Definitely not enough on this Earth to do 5 full books of them being the villains. So I'm going to say that this one probably averages out to like a 7 for me. It barely cracks over into that good territory, but a lot of the pages I think you could just like, yeah, and then this happened. So collectively as a 2-parter, it's better than this specific issue, but still an okay issue in its own right. Convergence Wonder Woman #2, written by Larry Hama, art by Aaron Lopresti. So last issue we got the reveal that it's Wonder Woman from the pre-crisis timeline and Steve Trevor against vampires, specifically Joker, Poison Ivy, and as we soon find out, Catwoman. But Catwoman's not a vampire. She's a werecat. Anyway, there's this cult there as well, but we'll get to them. So we open with Joker has just bitten into Etta's neck and effectively killed her. And he's just basically like gawking and just like doing a comedy bit for Wonder Woman, just doing this whole vamping thing, pun intended. And he's just like, oh yeah, you know, she doesn't mind. She's dead. Ha ha ha. And as she's basically saying like, oh, you are so focused on me and all that, some gunshots go off in the background. He's like, sounds like your boyfriend's still battling for his life there. And Wonder Woman's like, ah, crap. Well, I can't say that. I've got to go save him. So she tries to run off, but then Joker is like, oh, you're fast, but I'm faster, and gets in the way. And basically says like, yeah, you know, we're going to fight. I guess that in his continuity, he was already killed by Batman. So they have to explain how that got fixed. And basically they say, vampires are not able to heal themselves, but they are able to survive essentially any injury unless the head is disconnected from the body. And Joker got staked, so he was immobilized, but then Poison Ivy took out the stake and he was ready to go again. So at that point, he's still trying to crack like jokes and stuff, and Wonder Woman's like, I've had enough of you. You weren't funny when you were alive, you're not funny now. And if Batman couldn't take your head off your body, you damn well best know I'll do it. So she snaps Joker's neck and starts like prying it off, but then there's more gunshots from down the hall. And she's like, oh, right, Steve. Joker, I just severed your spinal cord. You shouldn't be going anywhere. I'm going to be back in a minute to finish the job. And he's like, oh, don't worry. You'll have to break me more thoroughly than that. So we see Steve is trying to deal with the cultists who have recently been turned into vampires. And he's just got a normal-ass gun. He's shooting them away. It's kind of working. It's at least getting them off of him. But we see that Poison Ivy, who of course has been turned, swats it away. And Catwoman's there as a werecat, and they go after Steve, and they're like, the gun's not going to be any use against us. That's because they're freshly turned. For us, we're so much more powerful than that. And Catwoman says, hey, what happens if we both bite him at the same time? Will he be a werecat or a vampire? Or both? And then what happens if we do that to Catwoman? Or not Catwoman, Wonder Woman. Would she be a werecat Amazon vampire princess? That's crazy. So at that point, she comes in. She snaps Poison Ivy's back. And then as Catwoman leeches in, she tries to bite onto Wonder Woman's wrist, breaks her teeth on her gauntlet, and then gets her face literally like caved in by a punch. So Wonder Woman starts dragging Steve Trevor along with her. It's just like, hey, we got to go deal with the Joker. But Poison Ivy and Catwoman get back up again along with the cultists. And just like, all right, fine, no more holding back. So she drops Steve and then just starts going to town on the cultists and everyone that's attacking her. We then see Joker is like managing to stand up, and he's trying to build a splint out of a bunch of bones that are in this catacombs he's in. And as he's trying to make it, he hears some giggling down the hall. Turns out Etta is back up. She's now one of Joker's, I don't know what you call them, baby vampires, the ones that are following his rule. So Wonder Woman's tearing apart the cultists, and she's thinking like, okay, I know what I have to do to beat all of the vampires. Joker told me that I have to break them to the point of immobility. So as she's focusing on the cultists, she misses the fact that Poison Ivy and Catwoman have taken Steve down to Joker, and Joker's like, oh yeah, she may be doing fine against the cultists, but we're the most powerful vampires here. There's no way she's going to be able to take on what will soon be 3 of us, 2 new turning ones, and then the cultists will be back again. Like, we'll be fine. So we see Poison Ivy going to bite into Steve Trevor's neck, and Wonder Woman nowhere in sight. So back over to Wonder Woman. She's taking care of the cultists, and she kind of has this rationalizing talk to herself with the wisdom of Athena, like a disembodied Athena. And Wonder Woman's point is like, I just killed a lot of things, and they would have had their own reasons for doing things. Does that make me a monster as much as them? And Athena's like, no. They are like absolute evil. They are not good anymore. Do not worry yourself about killing them. And Wonder Woman's like, okay, all right, sounds good to me. So she realizes that Steve's been taken, just like, oh crap, I gotta go save him. So she runs down the hall, but Steve has already been drained. He's already had his blood sucked, and we see Joker is willing to sick Etta on Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman's just super pissed off, just like, all right, I'm done with this. She goes over, reaches over to a nearby coffin that has a cross on it, rips off the cross, rips off a wooden spike from the edge, and says, all right, let's go. And she manages to stab the wooden spike into Poison Ivy, and then uses the cross, not as like a ward or anything like that, but literally just stabs it into Catwoman as well. So they both are seemingly dead for the time being. And then Joker says, all right, well, you forced me a little bit early here, but let's go for it. Rise, Steve. And we see Steve Trevor raise up as a vampire. So all of a sudden there's a rumbling, an earthquake of some sort. The kids from last issue down the street, they see it, and they see that the church is starting to crumble, and they're like, hey, that's where Wonder Woman went. Oh, it's coming down. In the church, we see all like the pipes rupturing, the floor is falling apart. There's a giant cavern underneath the church that is now opened, right in between Wonder Woman and the rest of the vampires. And Joker says, all right, kill her, do it, leap after and do it. So Etta leaps over, or at least is starting to. Steve's holding back, and Joker doubles down, saying like, what are you waiting for? Jump. And he jumps, but he grabs hold of Etta and drags her down into the cavern, and he says, all right, Diana, that dawn I wanted to see when the domes are up, you're going to have to watch it for me. And he looks back up as she's getting her lasso ready to try to save him, but at that point, it's too late, and Joker stops her from getting to the both of them. And he does the whole thing of like, oh, don't you understand? In human existence, it's all a big joke, ha ha ha. And one woman says, oh, well, that's where you're wrong, Joker. And so he falls down into the pit, but of course he can fly. He has vampire wings. So as the church is falling down around, Diana's trying to make her way up. She grabs hold of a giant piece of timber that has landed next to her, and she's like, you know what, Joker? I would love to just completely forget about you, but I'll never forgive what you did to Steve. And she takes the timber and uses it as a massive stake and ends up finally killing Joker. So Wonder Woman starts to climb out of the hole she fell into. The rocks start to give way. She starts to fall. But then the kids show up and they rescue her. And Wonder Woman's just like, so you aren't as thuggish as you would like to be, do you? And she's just like, yeah, okay. Says the woman in the star-spangled panties. So they all get up. They run out of the church just before it falls down. And they're like, hey, what happened to that church lady or Etta? What happened to them? And Diana just looks sad for a moment. She's like, they all died. They're all dead in the church. And everyone looks sad. And Wonder Woman remarks in the final panel, like, I guess I won. I guess the other city is gone now. The vampire thing is no longer an issue, but I don't feel like I really won here. And her last thing is, Duke of Wellington was right when he said that a battle lost is only half as melancholy as a battle won. I really enjoyed this one. I think the writing and like the stakes felt right to me. It felt like they got the tone of the Joker right. I liked how they did the vampire stuff. The only thing that felt a bit weird is the were Catwoman. Maybe that's what it is in the actual continuity of like the Red Rain universe, but I would have just not included it. I think having it there makes it something that is, I don't know, a bit too funny, weird, a bit too camp, I guess, in a lot of ways. I just wouldn't have included that, but that's really the only thing that I got a downside for. The rest of it is very well done, and I like the way Wonder Woman ends it with like, I lost more than I gained here today. This was not a win by any standards. So yeah, it's a solidly written issue. I like the art as well. I'm going to say this one is a 7.5. Convergence Swamp Thing number 2, written by Len Wein, art by Kelley Jones. So this issue actually opens up with a recap, which is your standard fare of Swamp Thing found out he's a plant and not actually Alec Holland. They went to Gotham City for a time. They got put under a dome. Swamp Thing kind of wilted and whatever. Then the dome came up. He realized that, you know, he's now even stronger than before. And then they got teleported very suddenly into a vampire world and were attacked by a huge horde of vampires. So we pick up right from there. The vampires are coming at, and Swamp Thing's like, all right, all of you need to back off. I don't have flesh. I don't have blood. I literally have nothing for you. However, I can turn my fingers into oak stakes, and I can make garlic out of nothing. You don't want to fight me, bro. So bring it. And at that point, a voice off to the side says, hey, I don't think that they're your enemies. I think I am, unfortunately for all of us. And Swamp Thing's like, oh, God, not you. And it turns out it's Red Rain, Batman as a vampire. And he's like, well, looking at you, I'm willing to bet you're Swamp Thing of your universe. You can call me Batman. And we got a little problem here. And we see all the vampire horde is like, oh, we can kill them both. We can take them both out. And Batman reveals here of like, oh, you idiots. We've been fighting for so long. You've never realized a thing. I'm always going to be smarter than you. And he throws a batarang tipped with silver that decapitates like 5 of them. And at that point, they all turn to dust, and Swamp Thing's like, okay, it seems like we're both on the same side here, so why don't we focus on those vampires, and then we could sort out our thing? And Batman's like, I'm down with that. So immediately, they start just launching attacks on this entire horde of vampires, and it takes like 5 seconds. It's not even an issue for them. And meanwhile, Abigail, she's in all this. She's just off to the side, and Swamp Thing's like, okay, Vampire Batman, I really don't want to have to do the same thing to you. And he's like, oh, what? You think you could destroy me? You honestly think that? And he's like, I know that you're still Batman. You were a hero on my Earth, and I'd really rather not do that to a hero. And Batman's like, I am still a hero. I mean, I really try to be, but yeah, I've got some issues, clearly. So at that point, he's like, well, what do you think, Batman? Like, how do we sort this out between the two of us? Do you want to fight to the death, or do you want to work together and find a better solution? And Batman just like slices his finger off in like a little hiss rage moment, and he's like, I would do anything to protect my city, but I'm willing to bet anything that your city is more worth saving than mine is. And Abigail's like, oh, okay, cool, great. I guess we win that then. And he's like, yeah, totally. My Gotham's overrun by vampires, and I am not doing great at taking care of that problem. Like, I'm doing what I can, but there's a lot of them. So I'll make you a deal. I will surrender if you go to help me with my city of taking out the vampire population to a significant degree, so that way I can feel like I at least accomplished something before I go. And Swamp Thing's like, all right, fair enough. So we cut over to this random warehouse that's completely dilapidated. It's filled up with a bunch of vampires inside who have captured some humans and are about to bleed them dry for their little coven or whatever. And as they are about to feast, in comes Swamp Thing bursting through a wall, and he says, hey, Batman, you're welcome to enter this home. To which point Batman then busts in being like, oh, thank God. So the Coven's like, oh, hey, take these suckers out. We can take them all out. We've got numbers on our side. And Batman is just, oh, look, I'm just going to stop right now. A little aside here. Art in this, Kelley Jones' art of showing like both Swamp Thing and the Vampire Batman, top tier. Absolute goddamn top tier. I cannot overstate how well it fits the vibe of this book. So same sort of thing as the last attack. They both team up, they do their own things to take them out, and they start killing vampires. Some of the vampires realize, hey, wait a minute, go after the girl. She doesn't have any powers. So they start to attack Abigail, in which case Abigail pulls out a wreath of garlic that Swamp Thing formed beforehand. So they can't get to her anyway. Batman shows off one of his powers he has, which is turning into a mist as one tries to attack him. And he's like, you really should have seen that coming, but since you didn't. And he ends up breaking the spine of the head vampire for this coven. And he says, where's your queen? Where is she? Tell me the one who controls the city. And he's like, I ain't telling you anything. And so he rips off his head, and that's it for that vampire. So at that point, Swamp Thing's like, hey, man, don't worry about it. I've got my own ways of finding stuff out. So they free the humans there, make sure the cops come, and Swamp Thing's like, all right, just give me like 2 minutes. I promise I'll get this all figured out. And he just dissolves into a pile of nothing, and Batman's like, what the hell did he just do? And Abby's like, you'll just have to wait and find out. And he's like, I'm not good with patience. Tell me what he just did. And Swamp Thing reforms behind him, like goes to tap him on the shoulder. And Batman just freaks out, reflex, tries to attack Swamp Thing. And he's like, sorry, reflex. And he's like, don't worry about it. It literally did nothing to me. Anyway, I searched through the green on this weird-ass planet. I managed to find your vampire queen, and I know where we can go. So we cut over to some dilapidated mansion, just called the Gotham Mansion, where this woman is in there. I don't think we ever actually get a name for her, but she is the vampire queen. And Swamp Thing, of course, busts in because they have a little vase of roses in the room, and he's just like, oh yeah. And the queen's talking about like, oh, we've already overrun Gotham. The vampires to human ratio is 2-to-1. Soon we will branch out to all the other cities. And Swamp Thing's like, you friggin' idiot. Do you even realize we're on an alien planet now? Like, it ain't gonna save you to go branch out to, what is wrong with you? So he invites Batman into the house. Batman comes in and he's like, you handle the rest of the vampire horde here. I'm taking out the main one. Do not interfere with that. So Swamp Thing, it's a weird looking panel, but he extends his fingers out to start expelling a gas, and it turns out that gas is pure raw garlic extract in a gaseous form. So it takes out of the entire vampire horde, no problem. Meanwhile, Batman goes in for the vampire queen, and they just kind of like banter back and forth for a little bit, where the vampire queen's like, I am centuries older than you. I've been here forever. I've learned more than you ever possibly could know. You may as well quit while you're ahead. And he's like, enough talk. You want me, come and get me. So they lunge at each other. Batman's the quicker draw, and he manages to chop off her head. And that's it. That's the fight. So as they kill the vampire queen, all of her sires, all of her thrall become human again. And Batman's like, yeah, that's how it works. You kill the one in charge, they all turn back. So all of Gotham is now vampire free. Except for me, because I was turned by Dracula. And because Dracula's like the first vampire, different rules. I don't get turned back. And Swamp Thing's like, oh, well, do you want to reevaluate our deal then? Because, like, now that your city is not overrun by vampires, it's not inherently not worth saving anymore. So, like, maybe we should talk about that. Batman's like, I'm still going to be a vampire. I'm still going to be in the city. Eventually, I'll give into my bloodlust and I'll turn someone. Look, it's just not a good deal. I need to lose this, okay? But the last thing I want from you is to help me watch the sunrise. And Swamp Thing makes the point of, like, we're on an alien planet. I don't think sunrises work like that. But they go up to the roof of the place, and he's like, yeah, no, I want to do this. And the sun starts to rise up, and Swamp Thing's like, what? Has something changed? What is going on with this place? And Batman says, I forgot how beautiful it is, and he starts fading away into dust. And the big voice comes over, Tello, saying competition ended. Swamp Thing and Abigail are teleported back to their version of Gotham, and he's just like, all right, well, we're back. That's great, but, like, what do we do now? And at that point, earthquake happens, a big rumbling, and he's just like, it'll be done in a second. I can feel the green on this planet, it's whatever. But he says, well, now that that's done, let's go back to Gotham and see if we can find anybody that we know. So I guess they're headed out of, I think they're in just Gotham Central Park, aren't they? Maybe somewhere else, but I think that's where they're at. So yeah, that's the issue. Like I said, somewhere in the middle there, the art by Kelley Jones is absolutely perfect for this. It is so moody and so atmospheric. If you know Kelley Jones arts, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It fits both Swamp Thing and the Red Rain Batman. And then there's Len Wein writing it. Len Wein obviously has a whole bunch of experience regarding the Swamp Thing character. I believe he might have done the Red Rain as well. I might be very wrong on that. I can't remember for sure. But, like, either way, this works in every aspect of this. The art, the characters, the way they handle the stuff. I don't have a bad word to say about this whole thing. If I had to nitpick, I would say that it feels kind of weird that we basically just had two fights of, like, Vampire Coven and then different Vampire Coven that essentially were the same thing. I personally would have just done like Batman knows where the Queen is, but, like, could never get to her on his own and needs help from Swamp Thing. That would probably work better to just build up stakes and, like, make the fight feel longer. But I mean, it works. It does a great job as what it is already, and maybe that wouldn't have worked. Honestly, I just really like this one. I'm gonna say this is a 8.5 for me. Like, the only thing holding it back is that it's stuck in Convergence, but even then, at 8.5 is great to be put here. So yeah, top tier. Convergence, Justice League of America #2, written by Fabian Nicieza, art by ChrisCross. So last issue we had the Justice League of America for the time period. The three heavy hitters, Martian Manhunter, Zatanna, and Aquaman, were off the table, and all that was left was the B team to go against the tangent universe of the Secret Six, which kind of just seems like Justice League, whatever. So we open up and we see that, like, Vicky Vale's on the scene saying, oh, the Justice League has emerged from the rubble, but their power hitters are stuck in a bubble. Whatever are they going to do? And we see Sue Dibney, Ralph, the elongated man's wife, is saying, like, yeah, look, I love my husband, but, like, I don't think that this team of, like, D-team, D-list people is going to be able to do anything here. So regardless, they stand off against the Secret Six, and we get a new list of the names here. I don't think any of them are that important to really know, except that they are led by the Atom, who seems to be kind of almost Superman-ish in a way. Like, he looks a lot similar. But regardless, they start going up against, doing whatever they can. However, the Secret Six is actually making sure that they are not hurting police that are involved nearby. Like, they're throwing their punches at the superheroes, but whenever police get close, and, like, they try to keep them away from the firefight. But if the police fire, then yeah, they're forced to return fire at least a little bit there. So we do get one specific narration box that I got a kick out of, which is clearly they're heroes, even if it is from some sort of tangent universe, because they're from the you get the joke. Anyway, at some point we see that they're doing whatever they can. Vibe is actually laying down some pretty strong powerhouse hits, but they just can't stand up to it. One of the final ones standing is Steel, and Gypsy is off to the side. She was off protecting the heroes. She ends up throwing something into the fight. I think it's like a utility belt, and gets it over towards them, and it just explodes. I don't know exactly what happened there, but regardless, it gives Steel just enough time to pick up all of the wounded, all the ones that have been hurt, and say, all right, tactical retreat, let's get out of here. Vicky Vale, meanwhile, who is reporting all this, says they ran away because they're cowards, because they're the D-listers. Hey, Sue Dibney, you're here. What do you think about your husband being a coward? And she's just like, hey, Vicky, hey, shut up. So, like we said, the power hitters are still there. They're still stuck in the bubble. And the Secret Six is like, look, we don't know what to do here. Like, we want to win this, so we're going to seek them out. But, like, if they hide for too long, then we might just, like, run out of time here, and they might be able to plan. So, like, we got to go find them. So they start seeking them out. We see that the group has managed to find one of Mr. Freeze's old hideouts. And Ralph particularly is the one who gets them broken in there. And just like, oh yeah, no, I figured this would be a good place to chill out. And Vibe's like, why are we cracking jokes, man? We just got our asses handed to us. And Ralph's like, oh yeah, you know, we survived. Like, you know, does anyone else here feel like we're losers and that we don't belong to be here? And the rest of the team is like, kinda, yeah, we all kind of feel that way, Ralph. That is like a thing. So we see the Secret Six is scouring the city, doing what they can. Some of the people who were left over from the GCPD and all that are running scans or whatever on the bubble that the power hitters are in, and they're like, well, there's a thing in the magic whatever hoo-ha that basically says if they could freeze it for just a moment, then they might be able to get themselves out. And that's where I believe it's Maggie Sawyer is like, hey, I've got an idea. We need a patrol car. So we cut back over to the JLA, who were like, look, our options are not turn ourselves over, surrender, and lose our city. We're going to go out there and we're going to win because that's the only option. That's what we have to do. And it's like, oh, what happens when we lose? And it's like, we're not going to lose. We're going to hold them off long enough to figure out how to free the others. And then the Justice League will be at its full capabilities to be able to take them down. And they're like, oh yeah, well, maybe we could like pick them off by smaller numbers. Like we could do whatever. All of a sudden an earthquake happens. It literally amounts to nothing. And Ralph is like, all right, well, let's go. We'll take out the Secret Six. We'll pick them off one by one, and we'll figure out how to free the other members. And as he's about to like open up the door to do it, the wall caves in. Secret Six has found them. And so the fight now has to take place here. Vibe fully opens up. He is blasting away. One of them, I think it's Spectre, I could be wrong, he just manages to shatter him into like a million pieces, but he's made of some form of plastic, so he can reform. Steel manages to land a solid punch on the Atom, and Atom's just like, that almost hurt. Meanwhile, the rest of them, they're all doing what they can. However, Sue and Officer Montoya, so I don't think it was Maggie Sawyer, I think it was Sue, showed up and was basically like, hey, guys, what are you doing here? And Sue's like, oh, we have an idea on how to free the others, but we need you guys to get out of here because we can't make it through in this fight. And Ralph's like, got it, will do. Love you, honey. And so he tells Vibe, clear a path, get us out of here. And they do their very best to get their way out of the warehouse. Meanwhile, Sue goes over and picks up one of Mr. Freeze's gun and says, all right, this should be able to work. So we resume the fight with the Secret Six, and they're just barely holding on. Not the Secret Six, the JLA. They're doing everything they can, but ultimately they are starting to get knocked down. They're starting to get surrounded. And he's like, all right, well, I don't know how much I have left, but I'm willing to do what I can. And as it looks like they're about to go out like heroes, the Secret Six all of a sudden get mind whammied. And it turns out that the heavy hitters were freed by Sue using the freeze ray, and Martian Manhunter and Aquaman hit him with telepathy, whereas Zatanna just cast a spell and sent them back home. So at that point, the three heavy hitters come up saying like, oh yeah, they figured, you know, we were the reason that all this happened. They freed us. We figured we may as well just end it. And it's like, yeah, kind of. So at that point, Vicky Vale shows up and she's like, oh, I'm Vicky Vale with the news team. We were here to talk to the heroes who saved this city. And Aquaman's like, well, now, Vicky, I don't want to toot my own horn here. But she walks right by Aquaman, goes up to Ralph and says, how does it feel to see the newer League members perform so courageously? And Ralph is like, well, you know, it feels like it always does after a fight, whether you're fighting with Superman or Batman or these brave heroes. And he gestures to all like the B team. He's like, these heroes who help save the day. It's always proud to stand beside the Justice League. So, yeah, it's a nice little story. I do like the arc that is told about the B team and saying, like, yeah, we know they're not the best heroes. We know that they are kind of just the losers here. But I like how they turn it around and make it a thing where they have their purpose and they know there's no shame in serving the greater good through whatever means you're able to do. Even if that's just holding on to the line long enough for other people to come in and like deliver the actual final blow. So I think that is a interesting and different message that you don't really see that often. As for the Secret Six, the Tangent Universe, they're all interesting, but I just don't feel like I got enough of them to really get their thing. They're just kind of vague. Oh, look, villains are here. You know, not really a big like, oh, okay, I understand their reason to fight as well. They tried it. It didn't quite land. So I think overall this one is probably going to be I'm going to say 7.5. I also really like the art in this. I think it was, stylistically, it did a few different things. There are some strange faces, but I'm willing to put that up to a style choice. So yeah, 7.5, and I think this one was actually really okay. Convergence, New Teen Titans number 2, written by Marv Wolfman, art by Nicola Scott. So last issue, the fight that took place, and we had a whole thing with the Teen Titans getting their powers back and blah, 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 was between the Teen Titans, pre-Crisis, and the Tangent Universe Doom Patrol, which apparently comes from the future, and their whole thing is they think if they get Cyborg's batteries, they're going to be able to use them to get out of this planet and go back to their time and their world and all that. So they're after Cyborg. And then one of them, named Firehawk, doesn't like how duplicitous the Doom Patrol is being and contacts Nightwing. And that's where we leave off. So this issue picks up with Nightwing and Firehawk talking on comm, saying, like, why should we trust each other? We have no reason to think that the other one won't screw each other over, except that we both think that we're heroes, and therefore we'll do the right thing. And they say, yep, that's good enough for me. So they meet up on a rooftop, shake hands, and Nightwing's like, yeah, hi, I'm Nightwing from Earth 1. And he's just like, Earth 1? That's a little presumptuous, don't you think? How do you know you're Earth 1? It's like, Barry Allen named it Earth 1. And Firehawk's just like, well, I'm from just Earth, but the future, so whatever. So while all this conversation's going on, we see that the Doom Patrol is actually already setting up their plan to attack Cyborg and get whatever they need. So while Nightwing is talking to Firehawk, we see Doom Patrol breaks into the hospital room and immediately just starts taking shots. They start firing at people using their skills when they can. I always forget her name. The one that's into Jericho or Joe, whatever his name is. She makes a bubble against one of them, making sure no one can attack. They manage to knock Starfire off for a bit. Eventually, one of them fires off a shot that hits Beast Boy and Jericho at the same time. And so they're both down for the count. Meanwhile, they're like, okay, grab Cyborg. Let's get him out of here. We'll grab his batteries elsewhere. Someone calls up, I think it's Starfire, calls up Nightwing and says, hey, they're here, they're attacking, to which Nightwing looks at Firehawk and be like, you son of a bitch, you're a distraction here to keep me from my team while the attack was launched. And Firehawk's like, no, I swear to God, like, I didn't know anything about this. So at that point, Nightwing takes off, goes back to help out the team, while Starfire's the only one that's still really throwing punches here. So as they start to make their escape back to their escape vehicle, Starfire's like, oh, okay, you want to go? You want me to cut loose? I'll cut loose. And remember, last issue, Starfire's whole thing was really, really, really wanting to kill. So as they are trying to hold back Starfire, she ends up backhanding one of them, gets caught in the thing by the other, and she just starts letting out energy blasts. Meanwhile, what's her name? The one who has a love for Joseph, as he's like unconscious and starts coming to, she gives him a big old kiss and says, oh, Joe, I love you so much. And he just wide-eyed sits up and goes like, no, let's, mind you, he's mute. He's just like, no, let's not do that. And he like pushes her away. Starfire has Doomsday, the leader of the Doom Patrol, down on her knees and just being like, oh, you know what, you surprised me before, but now I'm not going to let that happen again. And she gets shot by Doomsday and she's like, you should have just killed me when you had the chance. So they all manage to escape just as Nightwing shows up and He's just like, oh no, they have Cyborg. What are we supposed to do? So they reassemble up on top of roof. The Nightwing's trying to come up with a plan, and Starfire's just pissed. Just like, hey, look, I get it that your Earthway is not an eye for an eye, like killing, but we're not on Earth. So, like, stop with your sanctimonious crap and let me live the way that I need to live here. And Nightwing's just like, hey, look, it was... two wrongs don't make a right. Like, that's universal. That's not something just here. So they start getting into a shouting match, and as Starfire goes to storm off, Donna Troy's like, hey, you know, let's just talk. Let's just have a little chat. I'm good at listening. So they go off, and then Nightwing starts talking to Beast Boy, and Beast Boy's like, look, man, I've lost everybody that I've ever called a family member. I'd really like to not lose Cyborg as well, because he's like closer than a brother to me. So at that point, we see Firehawk goes back to the Doom Patrol and says, why did you do that? We could have worked together. We could have done something. And Doomsday's just like, I'm not going to leave this up to you stupid, young, idealistic children. This is the way it has to be to save our world. Get over it. So we go back to that girl. God, I wish I knew her name. They literally never say it in this entire issue. I would have remembered it if they did. But they basically say, she walks in on Joseph painting, and they kind of just have a moment where, without actually saying it, she's like, I get it. I understand that, you know, your parents, they were warriors, they were fighters, but you're an artist, and you don't have to hide that from anybody, especially not me. I love you no matter what. And they hug, and they have a nice little tender moment. So we then see Donna and Nightwing start talking, and Nightwing's just like, I'm screwing this up, aren't I? And she's like, nothing that can't be unscrewed at this point, but yeah, you'll figure it out. So Beast Boy is watching a radiation map, trying to get a leak on wherever Cyborg is, because whatever his battery's made of is radioactive. We see over in an undisclosed hangar, they start draining the batteries out of Cyborg, and he's screaming out in pain. Doomsday doesn't have a problem with it, but Rampage does, just being like, hey, he's in pain. Maybe we shouldn't. She's like, it's for the greater good. And Cyborg's like, yeah, I get it. You don't even see me as a person. I'm just a machine to you, aren't I? And machines, they can't feel pain. So yeah, go ahead, do it. Throw it on. Do it right now. And he's like telling them, push it more and more, despite screaming out in pain every time they turn it on. And Rampage has that sad look on his face as he does it. So at this point, we do see that the little ping shows up on the map. Starfire goes over to Nightwing and says, look, I love you, I respect you, but I don't feel like you respect me in that same way. And if this is going to work, like, not only as teammates, but as whatever we are together, maybe we should talk about that. And then Beast Boy just runs and says, like, we got a hit! Everyone in the plane, let's go! So they all start making their way out. They find where the Doom Patrol is held up. They immediately start launching an attack. Beast Boy turns into a rabbit, sneaks inside, manages to get Cyborg out. He's like, cool, let's go. Cyborg's like, no, hold on. I got one more thing that we got to do. So as the fight is going on up top, we see Nightwing pushes Starfire out of the way of a seemingly lethal hit. He's just kind of dazed, though, so I don't know why he was so upset about it. But Starfire's like, oh, you wanted to kill him. And Doomsday's just like, yeah, my planet did what it has to survive, and two wrongs can make a right. Don't let no one tell you otherwise. So as she's coming in, ready to attack Starfire, Starfire's just like, oh, but I'm not holding back this time. And she punches Doomsday in the face and says, I'm not going to become you, and that's why I won't kill. So with Doomsday down, out for the count, Nightwing sits up and is just like, oh, Starfire, you didn't kill her. I'm so happy. I love you. And they share a kiss with each other. So at that point, it's a standoff. Both sides are staring at each other. They're willing to do what they have to win. But then Cyborg shows up, full-on suicide bomber, got a button in his hand saying, hey, here's how it's going to go. Either we're going to work together and we're going to figure out a way out of this, or I'm going to press this button and in 60 seconds I'm going to explode, taking all of your tech with you. So what's it going to be? Either you fail and you'll never get out of here, or we can work together and try to make it be a thing. And Firehawk steps up and is just like, Mom, maybe you should, listen. And so she's like, fine, all right. And she shakes Nightwing's hand. And Cyborg's like, oh, thank God, I really didn't want to die. But as they're about to say that, as they're about to start figuring out how to work together, all of a sudden there is a massive earthquake. And it looks like something's happening, God only knows what, but when they all manage to come to and the earthquake stops, the Doom Patrol is nowhere to be seen. They seemingly have been teleported out, and they look up in the sky, and there's only a single star up there for some reason. And Beast Boy's just like, oh, well, at least we're finally back on Earth. It's great, even if it's not exactly as we left it. And Donna's like, no, I don't think we're back on Earth. I think we're still on the alien planet. So at that point, Nightwing and them say, yeah, well, no matter what it is, as long as we're all together as a team with the people we love. And he holds Starfire's hand as everyone smiles. Okay. I'll keep it brief. I liked it, but I do think it has its flaws. The biggest flaw that I'm really going to say is that leaving off on the thing of saying, okay, we've got Nightwing and Firehawk talking in secret and like trying to make a plan that would be able to save both teams, that just fizzled out into kind of nothing. I think that could have been so much more of a like cool thing to deal with. Not even like doing anything where it's an interesting plan, but just this idea that like they both kept it secret from their own teams and have this own duplicitous thing going on. And then you get to play with the ideas of trust and the ideas of like going behind other people's backs and whatnot. I think there would have been something there. The Starfire plot's fine. The Joseph and what's-her-name's plot, I really wish, I'm going to flip through real quick and see if I can find it while I'm talking. Those plots were okay. I do think it was just a little bit, I don't know, iffy for me. I really don't know her name. Anybody who knows her name, put it in the comments. But no, it's close. It's very close to what I would want out of this, but in the end, it does feel like two very disjointed issues that didn't have a lot in common and just ended up being their own things. So I'm going to say this one's probably 6.5 for me. It's not quite up there, but it's not awful either. Convergence, The Flash, number 2, written by Dan Abnett, art by Federico Dallocchio. So, last issue, Barry Allen, he was feeling a bit sad because he wasn't fast no more, and he wanted to get back to his own time in the future, because that's where he's living with his wife. Dome falls down, gets his powers back, and then runs into the Tangent Universe's Superman at the very end. And then this issue is everything I want. So we open up where it's just Flash and Superman standing on a rooftop, just going with ideas back and forth, just talking. And he's just like, so we're supposed to fight each other? And Superman's like, yeah, it seems a little bit contrived. Like, you have something that is so super intelligent that it's able to make these domes that it seems able to open without any issue, but we are not able to make a dent in by any sort of metric over the course of a year. It seems strange that it would do something so basic as we have to fight each other. And like, that's does that make any sense to you? And Flash is like, well, I mean, it used to happen on Star Trek all the time. And he's like, yeah, and those episodes never made any sense either. So Flash is like, well, you used a word in there. You said one such as I when you were describing how hyper intelligent this creature was. Shouldn't you have been able to deal with this? And he's just like, yes, and I have a super hyper accelerated evolution of my brain. I am hyper intelligent. Flash is like, oh, and you're modest too. And he's like, look, I'm not boasting, but it's literally what I am. That's what I do. And Flash is like, so you're Superman of your Earth? And he's like, yes, I'm the Superman of Earth 9. We have a tangent reality to yours, and you're Barry Allen. And Barry's like, oh, okay, you also have telepathy? And he's like, yes. And I really like reading your mind because it moves so quickly. It's actually kind of a challenge to keep up with compared to normal people. And Barry's like, oh, well, I'm good. I'm somewhat of a challenge. And he's like, look, I, again, don't mean to offend you, but like my abilities are just better than yours in every single way. If we were to have a fight between each other, I would absolutely crush you. Like, it's not even a question of that. And Flash is like, uh-huh. And he's like, oh, but like, I recognize I'm superior to you, but I respect you, and I don't want to fight you and all that. You have saved numerous worlds, and like, that is great. Loving that for you. So yeah, under other circumstances, we'd be an ally. And Flash's like, but if we fight, you'd win. And he's like, yes, that is just a fact. I'm not going to pretend like that's not true. So at that point, Flash is like, okay, well, let's reevaluate our initial thing here. If we don't fight, then both of our cities get destroyed. And he's like, yeah, that's what the rules are. And he's like, so is it constructing an dilemma for us, a moral dilemma where we fight pointlessly and only one side perishes. It seems a bit too simplistic. It implies that this is something of like eugenics or misanthropy or something like that, survival of the fittest. And Flash is like, yeah, survival of the strongest, perhaps, in this specific case. And he's like, well, survival of the winner at the very least. It doesn't mean they have to be the strongest. But yes, the destiny of millions were between unmatchable, incompatible rivals. Because we can't possibly be the only ones in this situation. There are other fights going on out there. And Flash is like, well, what if this is all just mind games? And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you claim that you are the Superman of your Earth, but the Superman of your Earth might just be the entity. And either way, all I'm doing is taking your word for it that you would outclass me so much. It would be in your favor that I don't try to fight you if you are weaker than me. And you could just be saying this essentially as a bluff. And Superman's like, yeah, no, all possible. It's not true, but yes, that is possible. And he's like, and that's exactly what you would say if it were actually true. So all you're basically trying to do here is psych me out and try to get an easy win without actually having to test your might against me. And Superman's like, really? You think that? And immediately Flash just launches in and he's like, yeah, I've seen Star Trek. So he throws a punch, lands it in Superman's face, and the fight happens so quickly, but Superman's able to keep up. So Superman casts a bubble, like a shield around him. Flash crunches his fist against it, and he's like, all right. He throws another punch. This one manages to make its way through. Superman takes another punch. He tells Flash to desist. He starts doing something to Flash's mind, but Flash manages to run up fast enough to super speed, push him off the top of the roof to the building across the street. Flash leaps after him, but Superman's ready with, like, he's got a staff that he uses to control his powers, uses the staff to basically batter up Flash right back to the same building. He throws his own punch at Flash, causing him to fall to the street below, but then Flash is running back up the side of the building, lands another hit on Superman. Superman is on his back and says, please stop. And at that point, Flash gets hit with a mind whammy. And Superman says, hey, I am literally stopping the synapses in your brain from firing right now, just so you understand how hopelessly outclassed you are. I don't want to do this. I don't want to see your city die, and I don't want to fight you. And Flash, just writhing in pain, is like, okay, yeah, hopelessly outclassed. Got it. Understood. You were right. Understood. So Flash stops being tortured. Superman's like, okay. And Flash is like, I guess you and he's about to say win, and Superman stops and says, don't say it. Don't say it, because that might end the fight, and we don't want that yet. There's something else happening here, especially when I looked into your mind just then. And Flash is like, what? And Superman starts saying, look, you're dislocated from your time stream. And Flash says, yeah, all of us are. None of us are in the right time here. And he's like, no. All of us are within reason still attached to our own thing, but you have something special going on with you. Like, you have the stuff in the 30th century going on, but you're also in this time period, but like there's also something else on top of it. Like earlier on in the previous issue, you mentioned the Speed Force, but in your continuity at this point, you don't know what the Speed Force is. Wally West is the one that made that. How would you have that memory? And he's like, what? What are you talking about? And he's just like, look at this image in your mind. He pulls up the cosmic treadmill, and he's like, what, do you see what this is? And he's like, yeah, I know that cosmic treadmill. And he's like, okay, who is this? And he pulls up Iris. And he's like, that's Iris. And he's like, yes, your wife. She's in the future, all that. Who is this? And he pulls up an image of the anti-monitor, and he's like, I don't know who that is. And then they show the Flash running and fading away and like disappearing as he does in Crisis. And he's like, and what is this? And Flash is like, I don't know. And he's like, that's all in your head. It's in your destiny. And your destiny is not here. You are not to die here. You are to die at a later event in order to save the entirety of creation. And Flash is like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, I can't beat you here, because if I beat you here, I am going to cause an absolute disruption in the time stream. Everything is going to go wrong. You have to live for the sole purpose of dying in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And Flash is like, what are you talking about, man? And so Superman raises up his staff and says, I yield, I forfeit, Gotham wins. And Flash is like, but what about your city? And he's like, if it was my city versus your city, yes, I think that would be something where we would have this discussion and I would try to come out on top. But my city for the entirety of creation, that's just numbers, man. I'm going to let you win this because it's the right thing to do. And he just disappears. He disappears into a little ball of light. Telos comes over the comm saying, attention, Flash won that battle. And Flash is like, I guess I won? That was weird, though. And so an earthquake happens at that point. He's like, is this the end? Is this everything's going to start coming apart? But the earthquake ends and he goes back down, turns back into Barry Allen, and he's like, I don't know what to make of that. That's the problem with talking to hyper-intelligent people, is that it doesn't make much sense to the rest of us. But what he was saying is that I have to live now so I can die later. Does that mean I don't make it back to Iris? Does that mean that my happy ending, my getting my powers back, the best thing that's happened all year, is actually meaningless here? Like, is that what this really comes down to? And he goes back to his job. We see that girl Josie is there like, oh, you missed it, Alan, the entire dome came down. And he's like, no, I saw it. It's whatever. And she's like, what's the matter? And he's just like, I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I don't think there's going to be a future. There's no happily ever after for me, but whatever it is, I can't run from it. So, and I'd be damned if I did try to run from it. So we see him holding the ring, and then it goes into like little Kirby dots, the little bubbles at the end. And that's the end of that. God, I love this issue. I love this issue so much. This is like everything I wanted from Convergence. Like this and the previous issue, because the previous one was also very well done as well. The pacing of the fight scene, fantastic. The moral quandaries and just like the talking it out, and even making reference to like, this is just original series Star Trek, where it's like, yes, we have like the brief little talk and then we start to fight about it. Like, and then the bit at the end where Superman, being of this higher dimensional intelligence, says like, I can't beat you because you're needed for the timeline. And it's like, gives him this out to lose the fight while simultaneously being a very convincing reason as to why. All of this is exactly what I love from these sort of stories. So top tier on this one. Really did enjoy it top to bottom. If anything, this is making me want to read Tangent comics more than like any of these other tie-ins, just to see like, how does this Superman work in his universe? Because if it's anything like this, I'm super intrigued. So yeah, 9. I'm giving it a 9. Like I'm baffled that a Convergence tie-in managed to get there, but like, nah, this is great. I really, really enjoyed this one. So check it out if you haven't. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this May 20th, 2015. And funnily enough, I actually have off of work this week. Nothing specific, I just needed to burn some vacation time. And a little voice in the back of my head says, hey, you might want to use that time to get ahead on the show. So that way you're not rushing to do it every night right before the deadline. And I can only turn to that voice in my head and say, we've been together for at least 20 plus years, voice. You don't know me at all. I'm going to keep on riding the line of how stressful can I make my Monday nights for a Tuesday upload. Oh, it's so much fun. Anyway, you are not here for my sleep schedule. You're here for comics. Let's talk about what's coming up next week. Next week is the final week of Convergence. We are doing, once again, some pre-crisis books, but this time we're getting a bit weird with it. I mean, we did 4 weeks ago as well, but these are also a bit weird. So what we've got on the docket is the final issue of the main series Convergence. I believe that might be oversized, but don't hold me to it. And then we've got the second issues for all of the relevant Convergence series of Action Comics, Detective Comics, Infinity Inc., Justice Society of America, World's Finest, Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Crime Syndicate, Plastic Man and the Freedom Fighters, and Shazam. Now, I remember that week not being great or good or okay, so I'm not holding out a lot of hope that next week's going to be any of those things. But regardless, we'll see what happens when we get there. I don't think I have anything else to add. Just be sure to tune in. We are approaching the final arc of this show, as starting in episode 196. So yeah, be ready for that. Anyway, if you have anything you'd like to add onto any of the discussions that I've had about this week's, last week's, any week's comics, go ahead and add them in the comments down below the YouTube video if that's what you're watching, or hit us up in one of the multiple social media platforms that we are on. We recently did an overhaul on our Discord, and by overhaul, I mean we added like 12 emotes. That's as much effort as I can put into things. We also have a subreddit and a Patreon. Those aren't as cool, though, because they don't have emotes. So, yeah, that's really what it's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week and interact with it in a positive manner, because we need a little bit of happiness in the world nowadays. Also, it's my vacation week, so don't bring me down. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you again, and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.